Fintan O'Toole is author of The Heroic Failure, Brexit and the Politics of Pain, joining us now out of Dublin. And Sir, Britain might not know if it's going to leave the EU with or without a deal, but other countries certainly making plans. You're in Ireland, whose Prime Minister says these are no longer contingency plans, they are being implemented by the government. Now, businesses and other organisations must do the same. Look, there are clearly some wins to be had for Ireland, let's face it. But do people there see Brexit as something of a national embarrassment for the United Kingdom?
Yes, I mean, it's a bit like, having a very close friend and neighbour who is going crazy. You obviously feel very sorry for them and you wish they weren't going crazy. But after a certain period of time, you throw up your hands in despair and you wonder, what can you do to help? It is pretty extraordinary, the kind of spectacle that we've seen in what used to call itself the mother of parliaments, where it seemed absolutely impossible to get any kind of agreement about anything.
Well, while the outcome, as you rightly point out, is uncertain at this time, it's clear there is some damage to Britain's reputation. That is very real. One writer from India says, quote, there are 27 European nations and yet they speak with one voice. There is supposed to be one UK, but it speaks with many voices. In a perverse way, the British divide and rule policy has, returned to mock the UK itself. Fintan, is this the political future of the UK? Something that to the outside world could look like organised anarchy?
Yes, I think what's really come home to us this week is that actually Brexit's not about what it seems to be about. It seems to be about Britain's relationship with the European Union. It's actually about Britain's relationship with itself. And, the Europeans have been complaining all through this process that you can't negotiate with the British because they're really negotiating with themselves. But this turns out to be actually true in a much deeper sense. So really what we're seeing is a crisis of belonging in Britain. You have obviously huge questions over the union itself. You have the fact that Northern Ireland and Scotland voted very differently from the way England voted. You have huge divisions within England itself. You have huge divisions within both of the major political parties. You have 4 or 5 different major solutions currently being canvassed. You have an apparent inability of the existing political order to deal with this crisis, which it has largely created itself. And it seems to me that they're going to have to reach a point where they say, look, we're not capable of dealing with this Brexit thing at the moment, because in a sense, we don't know who we are. We don't know what we want. We haven't really had a proper conversation about what Britain's supposed to be like in the 21st century. And in a funny way, Britain has just displaced all of these things to the European Union, which is not the fundamental problem.
And if I were to suggest that I get a sense of a certain schadenfreude, not just in Germany, about all of this, I'm not suggesting from you, but I'm sure there are Irish and many others around Europe who I don't, not to get a pleasure from this necessarily, but I mean, you know where I'm going with that. Have written.
There was a period in which the British used to ask, are other people fit for self-government? That was a kind of an old British imperial question. And you now ask about themselves.
Let's talk about that, because you yourself have written that Britain cannot escape history. You say when you listen to the ardent leavers, what they say about a no-deal Brexit is not that they are really convinced it's a good thing, but that the English will endure the suffering and get through it is because that is what they have always done. Could the British spirit of keep calm and carry on actually be harming the UK at the moment?
I think it's doing enormous harm. I think you're absolutely right in that question, because you have this sort of weird sense that somehow it's not that a no-deal Brexit wouldn't involve suffering. It's that the suffering would somehow kind of purify Britain in some way, bring it back to its real self. We'll show the great spirit we showed during the Second World War, the Blitz spirit, the Dunkirk spirit. All this kind of stuff is not abstract. It's very much in their conversation. It's the way they're talking about it. And the problem, of course, is that the people who are going to really suffer are not the people who are leading this. So, of course, as in all of these things, the people who really suffer are the poorest, the most vulnerable. The people who are driving Brexit, are mostly pretty wealthy. Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's one of the most famous Brexiteers, for example, has big hedge funds. He's moved his hedge funds to my own city of Dublin so that they can avoid the fallout from Brexit, even though he's one of the main people who are driving for a no-deal Brexit. So there's a lot of hypocrisy in this. Yeah, a lot of art and a lot of self-harm. It actually comes down to the fact that this is going to do real harm to real people. And the problem is that these extremists really don't represent an enormous number of people. There's probably only 30 or 40 of them in the British Parliament. The vast majority of Parliament doesn't want a no deal. But you're in this state of chaos where almost by default you can just slide off the cliff without the vast majority of people wanting to do it.
Much criticism of those who have been elected to represent the people of the UK at present. Fintan, thank you. Fintan O'Toole, always a pleasure.